The velvet rope glimmered gold beneath the chandelier's white light. But for Amara Blake, it might as well have been barbed wire. Her heels clicked across the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel, every step echoing with certainty, until the doorman's arm shot out. "Stopping her inches from the entrance, ma'am," he said, voice tight, polite in the way that masks disdain. "This section is for guests of the sponsor." She lifted her badge, the one printed with her name, Amara Blake, CEO, Blake Analytics. Her company's logo shimmered under the light. He didn't even glance at it. "The sponsor list doesn't have your name. You'll need to wait in the general lobby." A few heads turned, laughter bubbled nearby, champagne glasses chiming. A woman in a glittering gown whispered to her partner, probably staff trying to sneak in. Amara felt the heat rise in her chest. Behind the velvet rope, men she'd negotiated million-dollar contracts with were shaking hands, none looking her way. "I'm not trying to get in," she said, her voice steady. "I am supposed to be in there." The manager arrived, a man with the smooth smile of practiced authority. He didn't ask for her ID. He just glanced at her skin, then at her dress, and said quietly, "Let's not make a scene." A single sentence that sliced deeper than any slur. Flashbulbs popped from a journalist's camera. Security moved closer. And then, from the stage beyond the velvet rope, the MC's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new platinum sponsor, Blake Analytics Incorporated." The entire room froze. Amara didn't move. She just watched the manager's face drain of color. Now they'd have to let her in. The Grand Meridian's chandeliers spilled light like liquid gold, catching the polished marble beneath a sea of tuxedos and sequined gowns. Every camera flash burned against the glassy walls. Every smile rehearsed. Amara Blake adjusted the hem of her tailored dress, deep navy, understated, and drew a breath steady enough to hide the pounding in her chest. She'd earned this night. Her company's analytics software had just landed a federal contract. Tonight she would meet investors who once wouldn't return her calls, but the man at the door didn't see any of that. "Invitation?" he asked, tone casual but eyes already narrowing. Amara held out her embossed badge, printed with the silver logo. Blake Analytics, platinum sponsor. He didn't take it. "This is for the VIP reception, ma'am. Staff entrance is down the hall." She blinked once. "I'm not staff." "Of course," he said flatly, glancing past her at the arriving guests. "Just policy." Behind her, laughter flickered. A cluster of women with champagne flutes whispered. She heard one say, "These people always try to get backstage." Her jaw tightened. "Check the list." The doorman hesitated, then waved over his manager, a tall man in a navy suit with the air of permanent authority. His smile came preloaded with dismissal. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth. "What seems to be the issue?" "She's claiming to be a sponsor," the doorman murmured. Amara raised her chin. "Claiming?" The manager turned to her, expression polite, calculating. "Can I see some ID?" She handed him her driver's license and company badge. He barely looked. "I'm afraid your name isn't listed, Ms. Blake. This section is for invited sponsors only." "That's exactly what I am." The man's smile thinned. "Let's not make a scene, all right? The main hall is open to everyone." Her hand clenched around the badge. For a heartbeat, she saw it. The old memory she thought she'd outgrown. Her mother in a grocery line. Being told her card didn't go through. Eyes of strangers cutting through her dignity like knives. She exhaled. Calm, control, always control. "I'm going to walk past you," she said evenly. "You'll be escorted out," he replied. A ripple passed through. The crowd, the murmuring thrill of scandal. Then, from the stage inside, the host's amplified voice sliced the tension. "Please welcome tonight's platinum sponsor, the CEO of Blake Analytics, Ms. Amara Blake." Silence, every head turned. The manager's face went rigid, color draining like spilled milk. Amara didn't speak. She stepped forward, slow, deliberate, past the velvet rope that had just defined her worth, and into the blinding light of her own name echoing across the room. But as the applause began, hesitant, uneven, she caught the look in the manager's eyes. It wasn't embarrassment. It was fear. A different kind of war had just begun. The next morning, the world had already seen her humiliation. Clips of the confrontation at the Grand Meridian flooded social media. shaky cell phone footage of her standing at the velvet rope, the manager's smug half-smile, the host's booming announcement cutting through tension like thunder. One caption read, "Black CEO denied entry to her own sponsored event." Amara watched it in silence from her office window. The skyline beyond the glass was washed in winter gray. Her reflection looked distant, too composed to match the pulse beneath her ribs. Her assistant, Kira, stood nearby, clutching a tablet. It's everywhere. Morning shows, blogs, even BBC. Blake Analytics is trending. Amara turned. For the wrong reason. They're calling for a boycott. People are furious she didn't respond. She watched the numbers rise on the live feed. Likes, reposts, outrage quantified. It felt mechanical, justice reduced to metrics. Her phone buzzed. The caller ID read, "PR Director Marcus Hale," she answered. "Marcus." "Amara," he sighed, his tone soft, managerial. "I've been on call since 6. The footage, look, it's bad optics for them, but we need to be careful. You're becoming the face of this thing, and that can backfire." "Backfire?" she repeated. "People are emotional right now. If you go public, it turns into a culture war. Investors don't like instability. Maybe issue a statement. Something measured, something that closes the story." Amara looked at the paused video on her screen. The moment the manager raised his hand to stop her. "You mean something that makes them comfortable. I mean something that protects your brand. My brand is my name." "Exactly. Don't make it political." She ended the call without a word. Kira exhaled, tension crackling in the air. "You're not going to let it go, are you?" Amara finally turned from the window. "Would you?" Kira hesitated. "If I were you, I might. You've worked too hard to get here. Don't let them turn you into a headline they can bury later." Amara's laugh was short, bitter. "They already buried me at that door." Silence settled, thick, cold. Then the office phone rang again. Kira answered, then mouthed, "Investors," Amara took it. "This is Amara." A man's voice, familiar and distant. "Amara, it's Richard. We saw the footage. Unacceptable, of course, but listen. The board's concerned. There's chatter about your response being emotional." Her grip tightened. "I haven't responded." "Exactly. The silence feels like escalation. Some of our partners think a formal apology from the hotel should settle this. You can't afford to alienate people right now." She leaned against the desk, eyes closing briefly. "People like you? People with capital," he said without irony. "Don't misunderstand, we support you. But business doesn't thrive on outrage. It thrives on resolution." "Resolution," she repeated quietly, "not justice." He didn't answer. When the call ended, the office felt smaller, air thinner. Kira was still standing there, searching her boss's face for something she couldn't name. Finally, she said, "You're going to fight them, aren't you?" Amara's reply was calm. "I'm going to remind them what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman." That evening, she sat in her living room surrounded by silence and half-drunk tea. The city outside glowed like a circuit board. Her inbox flooded. Media requests, apologies wrapped in PR language, offers to discuss diversity partnerships. Her lawyer, Darren Cole, called. "I saw the footage," he began. "You have grounds for a discrimination claim." "I don't want to sue them," she said. "Not yet? Then what do you want?" "I want the truth on record. Their truth, not the one they're rehearsing in conference rooms." He paused. "That means leverage." "I already have it," she said. "Public opinion. Public opinion fades. They'll outlast outrage. You'll need something harder." She nodded slowly. "Then we dig." By the next morning, the hotel had issued its apology. "We regret the misunderstanding involving Ms. Blake and value her contribution as a sponsor. The incident stemmed from a miscommunication regarding event access procedures." Misunderstanding. The word hung in her mind like a taunt. On TV, the anchor's voice was syrupy smooth. "The Grand Meridian says it will retrain staff to ensure inclusivity. Ms. Blake has not responded to requests for comment." Kira muted the television. "They're trying to close it." Amara sat at her desk, scrolling through internal memos her assistant had quietly pulled. Emails from event coordinators referencing high-risk guest verification. None named race, but the subtext bled through the phrasing. "Get me the meeting," Amara said. "What meeting?" "With their management," Kira frowned. "They're not going to like that. They don't have to." They just have to show up. Later that afternoon, Amara walked into her boardroom. Glass walls, polished wood, the skyline slicing across the horizon. Marcus Hale, her PR director, was waiting with 2 other advisors. "Amara," he said carefully, "we drafted a statement for you." She scanned it. Polished, sterile. "I appreciate the Grand Meridian's apology and look forward to continued collaboration toward inclusion." She tossed it onto the table. "You want me to say I forgive them?" "It's optics," Marcus said. "This is how the game's played." Her eyes locked on his. "I'm not playing." "Then you're risking everything." "No," she said, voice low, controlled. "They are." When they left, she stood alone at the window again. Outside, the city pulsed, cars streaming like blood through arteries of glass and steel. Her reflection merged with the skyline, her own outline faint but unbroken. She thought of the manager's voice. "Let's not make a scene." A scene was exactly what she planned to make. Not out of anger. Out of principle. Out of the years she'd been told to smile, to wait, to swallow it. The next email she typed was short. To Executive Director, Meridian Holdings subject. Meeting request. Blake Analytics Sponsorship Relations. Expect a private conversation regarding the handling of last night's event, failure. To respond will be interpreted as acknowledgement of negligence. She hit send. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the screen. What a steady waiting alive. Amara leaned back, letting the hum of the city fill the silence. They thought the story had ended at that velvet rope. It hadn't even begun. The conference room at the Grand Meridian smelled like lemon polish and quiet fear. Amara walked in, flanked by her lawyer, Darren Cole. Across the table sat the hotel's general manager, Thomas Everett, the same man whose smile had once told her to step aside, and 2 PR officers who looked like they hadn't slept. No cameras. No press, just the hush of diplomacy rehearsed to hide discomfort. Thomas rose as she entered, his politeness strained.
"Ms. Blake, thank you for meeting us."
"I hope we can put this unfortunate situation behind us." "Unfortunate," Amara said evenly, lowering herself into the chair opposite him. "That's one word for it." A PR officer, a woman with too perfect posture, interjected, "We truly regret the misunderstanding. The staff member involved has been disciplined." Darren opened his notebook. "Define disciplined." "A written reprimand," the woman replied, voice clipped. "He's been with us 15 years. It was a mistake, not malice." Amara leaned forward. "A mistake that humiliated me publicly in front of peers and clients, while your management watched." Thomas's hands folded on the table. "Ms. Blake, I personally apologize for that. It was never our intention to make you feel—" "Don't finish that sentence," she cut in. "You did make me feel it." "That's the point." The air thickened. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the younger PR officer, clearly junior, eyes darting, slid a folder across the table. "We've prepared a proposal. In recognition of your experience, the Meridian would like to offer you complimentary partnership status for the next event, along with a donation to a diversity initiative of your choosing." Amara didn't touch the folder. "So you want to buy my silence?" Thomas frowned. "That's not how we see it." "That's exactly what it is," Darren said. "A settlement without the word." The woman's tone tightened. "This isn't about silencing anyone. It's about moving forward productively." Amara's eyes lifted slowly. Productively for whom? No answer. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the soft scratch of a pen somewhere. She stood. "Here's what's going to happen. You will issue a corrected public statement acknowledging the discriminatory behavior that occurred under your staff's supervision. You will name it, not hide behind euphemisms like misunderstanding. You'll also commit to an independent review of your guest policies and racial bias training protocols." Thomas's polite facade cracked. "You're asking for a confession." "I'm asking for the truth," she said. "If that feels like confession, maybe that tells you something." He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. "Ms. Blake, I understand your frustration, but let's be realistic. Words like discriminatory and bias have legal weight. Our lawyers would never approve it." Darren closed his notebook. "Then we'll use our own platform." Thomas's gaze flicked to Amara. "You're threatening us?" "I'm warning you," she said. "Silence won't protect you anymore." The meeting ended without resolution. The hotel's PR team filed out first, whispering in low tones. Thomas lingered by the doorway, his face half-shadowed. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said quietly. "It was already big," Amara replied. "You just didn't think anyone would notice." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You'll ruin your reputation if you keep pushing this." "My reputation survived being denied entry to my own event. I think it'll manage." She walked past him, heels clicking like a metronome of resolve. Outside, Darren matched her stride. "They won't cooperate voluntarily." "I know. You ready for what comes next?" Her eyes fixed ahead. "They think they can wait it out." They're wrong. That evening, her apartment felt different. Too large, too still. She set her phone on the counter, then scrolled through the hundreds of emails flooding her inbox. Some were supportive. Others dripped with coded venom. "You're making everything about race. Just take the apology and be grateful. Why do you people always need to play the victim?" She stopped reading. The words blurred into static. Kira called. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." "I'm tired," Amara said. "Not of fighting, just of how predictable it all is." Kira hesitated. "I've been thinking. If we want the truth, we might not get it from them directly." Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, someone in their ranks probably saw what happened. Maybe someone who wants it fixed. You think they'd talk?" "Everyone talks, and if you ask the right way." Amara's mind clicked into motion. "Find out who was working registration that night. Cross-check LinkedIn. Look for anyone who's suddenly gone quiet online." "You're serious?" "Very." "Got it," Kira said. "I'll handle it discreetly." Hours later, Amara sat by her window again, city lights winking like defiant stars. She replayed the day in her mind. Thomas's condescension, the PR woman's scripted smile, the way they tried to rename humiliation into inconvenience. They wanted her silence wrapped in gratitude. Instead, she would give them consequences. She pulled out her notebook, the same one she used for her company's earliest projections, and began to outline her next steps. Leak the audio from the meeting. Contact journalists who covered corporate ethics. Coordinate timing with Kira once the whistleblower surfaced. Every step was clean, deliberate. Then, almost unconsciously, she wrote one line at the bottom of the page. "They called it an apology. I call it evidence." She closed the notebook, feeling the familiar hum of focus return. Not anger, not bitterness, but clarity. Tomorrow. They'd realize she wasn't waiting for justice. She was building it. The interview lights were blinding. Amara sat across from a television anchor, whose practiced smile could slice glass. The backdrop behind them glowed with the network's logo, sleek, blue, trustworthy. A makeup artist had powdered her face moments earlier, muttering something about camera sheen while the producer whispered, "Keep it calm, no confrontation." The anchor leaned forward. "Ms. Blake, thank you for joining us. The footage from the Meridian event has stirred quite a reaction. Some say you've become a symbol of systemic bias in business spaces. Others argue this is being exaggerated. How do you respond?" Amara's pulse thudded once in her throat, then steadied. What happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a moment that revealed how bias hides behind manners. The anchor smiled tightly. "But surely the hotel didn't intend harm." "They've apologized." "Intent isn't the measure," Amara cut in. "Impact is. You can humiliate someone politely. That doesn't make it harmless." A brief silence. Someone coughed off camera. The anchor shifted tone. "Still, critics are saying you're using this for attention. That perhaps you're playing into outrage culture." Amara's lips curved slightly. Not amusement, precision. "Outrage culture didn't stop me at the door. A man did. A system did. I'm not the story. The behavior is." The anchor blinked, caught off guard by the clarity. "So what do you want from all this?" "The same thing anyone denied dignity wants," she said. Acknowledgement. The control room stayed silent. Even through the lights, she could feel the temperature drop. When the segment ended, the producer rushed over, all efficiency and false warmth. "That was strong," he said. "Maybe too strong. You'll see how they edit it down." "Edit what down?" she asked. "Just the intensity," he replied, avoiding her eyes. She smiled thinly. "Intensity is the point." Back at the office, Kira was waiting with an expression caught between pride and worry. "They're already spinning it," she said, handing over a tablet. The network's social feed flashed with selective quotes. Amara Blake calls for acknowledgement, not division. CEO defends her reaction to alleged incident, Alleged. The word blinked like a taunt. Amara set the tablet down. They sanded off the truth, Kira nodded. They always do. Not this time, Amara said. Upload the uncut version to our channels. Kira hesitated. That'll burn the bridge. Let it burn. Minutes later, the full interview hit Blake Analytics' official site. Raw, unfiltered. Within hours, it spread faster than the broadcast version. Comments flooded in, and some furious, some inspired, all watching. That night, Marcus Hale called again. Amara, he began carefully. You're escalating a fight that can't be won. She leaned back in her chair. Can't be contained, you mean? This isn't about morality. It's about business. Your company's valuation depends on reputation stability. This could spook partners. I'm not protecting comfort at the cost of truth, he sighed. Then at least protect your staff. The backlash won't stop at you. I've been protecting everyone but myself for years, she said quietly. That ends here. She ended the call before he could respond. The next morning, her inbox was a battlefield. Half praise, half venom. Messages from other black professionals arrived by the dozens. Quiet thank yous, confessions of their own moments of erasure. One caught her eye. I was on staff that night. I saw everything. I'm ready to talk. It was unsigned, sent from an encrypted address. Attached was a short video clip, security footage from the hotel's internal camera. The manager's face. The doorman's gesture. Her standing still, badge in hand. No sound, just humiliation on repeat from a God's eye view. Amara stared at the screen, her breath catching, not from surprise but from confirmation. Kira leaned over her shoulder. They recorded it, Amara nodded slowly, and they tried to bury it. Whoever sent that just gave us proof. Not yet, Amara said, but they gave us a door. By evening, the footage had reached Darren. His message was cautious. If you go public, they'll retaliate legally. They'll call it unauthorized surveillance, she typed back. Let them. The truth doesn't need permission. Then she opened her notebook again, the one with the single line scrawled days ago. They called it an apology. I call it evidence below it, she wrote. Next move, expose the system, not just the people. 2 days later, the hotel released another statement. Polished, rehearsed, cowardly. We respect Ms. Blake's right to express her experience. We remain committed to inclusion. Not one word of responsibility. Not one acknowledgement of fault. The mask of civility had never looked so smug. At her desk, Amara watched their PR head read the statement aloud on TV. The tone was warm, soothing, the language engineered to anesthetize. Kira muttered, They sound like they're comforting themselves. They are, Amara said, because they know what's coming. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crowd's faces. The whispers, the manager's half smile, the way no one intervened. Civility had become camouflage for cruelty. She got up, walked to her window again, and whispered into the dark. You wanted me quiet. I'll give you the opposite. Outside, the city moved like a slow tide, indifferent, powerful. Somewhere she imagined the manager sitting in his office, confident the story would fade. It wouldn't. She opened her laptop, uploaded the footage from the anonymous sender, and wrote one line as its caption. Civility without accountability is complicity. Then she pressed post. The clip went viral within hours. News channels scrambled to confirm authenticity. Commentators argued, panels formed, hashtags multiplied. By sunrise, the hotel's legal department was already drafting statements, but the damage was done. For the first time, the world saw not just what happened, but how easily it had. Amara watched the view count climb, her reflection flickering on the screen, not triumphant, not vengeful, just unflinchingly present. The mask had cracked. Now the system behind it would have to answer. The footage detonated like truth always does, quietly at first, then everywhere. By the second morning, Amara's inbox was a storm. News outlets wanted exclusive interviews. Advocacy groups wanted her as their face. Board members wanted her to clarify the company's stance. But what unsettled her most weren't the headlines, it was the silence from people who should have spoken. The hotel executives had vanished behind no comment. The industry peers who once flooded Her events with smiles had gone mute, and the so-called allies, those who had publicly championed diversity panels and social responsibility awards, had retreated into ghostly quiet. Cowards, Kira muttered, scrolling through the list of corporate statements. All this talk about inclusion until it's inconvenient. Amara closed her eyes for a moment. No, they're not cowards. They're careful. There's a difference. You sound like you admire them. I don't, she said, but I understand them. They're waiting to see if I survive this before they decide if they know me. By noon, the first wave of damage control began. A PR consultant, polished, perfumed, all corporate empathy, arrived at Blake Analytics uninvited. Ms. Blake, she began, we represent several high-profile brands who've expressed concern. They'd like to help guide the narrative before it— Amara cut her off. Before it exposes their complicity? The woman blinked. Before it damages your credibility. Amara smiled faintly. My credibility isn't built on their comfort. You don't want to be seen as divisive. I want to be seen as accurate. That ended the meeting. Later, Darren arrived, unannounced, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired. He set his phone on her desk. You're trending in 62 countries. Sponsors are pulling out of the Meridian Gala Foundation. You've started an earthquake. She met his gaze. Good. I said earthquake, not revolution. Earthquakes don't choose sides. They destroy everything. She leaned forward. Then let's rebuild it right. He studied her. You're really not backing down, are you? Would you? He didn't answer immediately. Once I thought I wouldn't have to. Something softened between them. An old familiarity, unspoken regret. Then he sighed and said quietly, I'm still here, even if I can't say it out loud yet. Then you're one of the silent allies, she said. The ones who whisper support in private but never risk their own ground. He flinched. That's not fair. It's honest. That night she received another anonymous message, and this one longer. You don't know me, but I work in PR at Meridian. The board knew about the bias complaints for months. There are emails, training reports, even a memo about avoiding reputational risk by not addressing incidents publicly. I can get them to you, but if they trace it back, I'll lose everything. Amara's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed back. If we stay quiet, we all lose something bigger. Then she hit send. By dawn, an encrypted folder landed in her inbox. She opened it slowly, each file like a confession. Internal communications, risk assessments, meeting notes. One email in particular froze her breath. Subject, image management strategy. If confronted with allegations of racial bias, pivot to terms like miscommunication and isolated misunderstanding. Avoid direct apology. The polite language of corporate deceit. The same tone that had once dismissed her as overreacting. Kira looked over her shoulder. This is their manual for denial. It's their script, Amara said, and now we have it. The story broke that afternoon. Independent journalists confirmed the documents. The hashtag Daesh mask of civility began trending, the same phrase Amara had used in her caption. Talk shows debated systemic politeness as the new racism. The hotel's board went into lockdown mode. Their CEO released another statement. We are committed to learning and listening during this important dialogue. It was the same performance, an apology made of smoke. Amara didn't respond publicly. She didn't need to. The documents were louder than any statement she could make. That evening, her assistant poked her head into the office. There's someone here to see you. The door opened, and to Amara's surprise, in walked Helena Cross, the CEO of a major competitor and one of the most visible women in tech. Her reputation was built on empowerment panels and glossy magazine covers. Amara, she said, offering a hand. You've shaken the industry. Quietly impressive. Not so quiet anymore, Amara said. Helena smiled thinly. That's what worries me. I came to suggest something, off the record. You've made your point. Step back before they make an example of you. They already did, Amara said. I just refuse to stay in the frame. Helena sighed. You're brave. But bravery doesn't pay dividends. No, Amara replied. But it buys integrity. Helena studied her for a long moment, then said, You won't last long in this business with that mindset. Amara's answer was calm and certain. Then the business needs changing. Not me. After she left, Kira whispered, You realize what just happened? The queen of performative feminism tried to silence you. Amara smiled faintly. They call it advice when it's fear wearing pearls. That night, she received one last message from the anonymous source. They're planning a press conference. The manager who stopped you will apologize publicly, on camera. It's all scripted. Damage limitation, Amara typed. Then we changed the script. The next day, she stood before her office windows again, watching dawn turn the city gold. Somewhere below, cameras were setting up for the hotel's press event, the great performance of remorse. She turned to Kira. Prepare our statement. What do you want to say this time? Amara's voice was steady. That silence isn't neutrality. It's participation, Kira nodded slowly. And the footage? We play it again, everywhere, along with the documents. Let the public see both the face and the mask. Hours later, as the hotel manager stammered through his televised apology, the real story exploded beside it. The emails, the memos, the hidden culture. Reporters swarmed. Politicians tweeted. Investors withdrew. And in that chaos, amid the noise of collapsing civility, a new conversation began. Not about Amara, not about one hotel, but about the quiet architecture of prejudice, the kind that smiles while it excludes. She didn't need to speak anymore. The world was finally talking. That night, for the first time in weeks, she slept, not peacefully but purposefully. The silence had broken, and in its place came something better. Echoes. The backlash began less than 24 hours after the documents leaked. Anonymous threats. Harassment calls. A sudden routine audit from the city's business bureau. Sponsors rescinding contracts without explanation. Retaliation always dresses as coincidence. By the second day, Amara's phone barely stopped vibrating. Each call another reminder that truth was expensive, and the invoice always came due fast. Someone just tried to access our financial servers, Kira said, storming into the office. Encrypted attempt. Looked like a government trace, but too sloppy. Amara didn't look up. Corporate proxy. Meridian's lawyers are panicking. Should we call IT security? No, call our media team. Fear of exposure hurts more than exposure itself. Kira blinked. You're not afraid? I'm exhausted, Amara said quietly. There's a difference. Later that afternoon, her assistant entered with a single white envelope. Delivered by courier, she said. No sender. Inside and a cease and desist notice from Meridian's legal counsel. The language was clinical weaponized civility. Refrain from public dissemination of proprietary internal correspondence. Continued violation will result in immediate litigation and financial liability. Amara traced the signature at the bottom. One of the hotel's executives, a man she had once shared a conference panel with, who had praised her as a trailblazer. She said aloud, When they can't discredit your pain, they criminalize your voice. Kira exhaled sharply. They want you scared. They want me quiet, Amara corrected. Scared is just the method. That evening she called her lawyer, Evelyn Cho, sharp, deliberate, surgical with words. Evelyn's tone was calm, but beneath it ran steel. They won't risk a real trial, Amara. This is intimidation, not litigation. So what do I do? Nothing reckless. Don't post news statements. Let public opinion breathe. They're banking on fatigue. The public's and yours. Amara stared out the window. What if I'm already tired? Evelyn's answer was soft but firm. Then rest strategically, not silently. By nightfall, the smear campaign began. Anonymous blogs claiming Blake fabricated the story for attention. Doctored photos circulating online. Amara laughing at a gala cropped beside false headlines. A segment on a conservative network calling her the new face of professional victimhood. Each lie was carefully designed to sting but never stick. Microcuts of credibility. Kira slammed her laptop shut. This is war. No, Amara said. It's maintenance. They're maintaining the illusion that speaking truth is disorder. Then what are we maintaining? Memory. The next morning, Darren appeared again. He looked worn, his tie undone, his expression unreadable. You're being targeted, he said without preamble. Meridian's PR team is feeding stories to journalists off the record. I assumed as much. They're framing it as a corporate dispute, not discrimination, painting you as an opportunist. Will it work? For some, people like their racism subtle. They can consume outrage but not accountability. She gave him a long look. You still work for them, don't you? He hesitated. Technically, yes. But not for long, Amara leaned back. So this is your redemption arc? This is me choosing a side before the ground collapses. She studied him. Then help me. I need every thread of their cover-up. He nodded slowly. You'll get it. But after this, you'll have no peace left. Amara's expression hardened. Peace was a privilege they denied me the moment they said, we reserve the right to refuse service. 3 days later, her office was surrounded by cameras. Reporters shouting questions. Amara, do you regret leaking private documents? Are you seeking financial settlement? Is this about personal revenge? She stopped at the door and turned toward them. I don't regret telling the truth, she said, voice steady. And no, this isn't revenge. Revenge restores nothing. This is reckoning. Reckoning restores balance. Flashbulbs erupted like fireworks. That night, a video surfaced online. Grainy, handheld, obviously staged. It showed a woman resembling Amara in a luxury boutique, allegedly berating a store clerk. The caption, hypocrite CEO caught mistreating staff. Within hours, it was proven fake. But the damage was done. The goal wasn't accuracy. It was erosion. Amara sat in the dark conference room watching the clip loop silently on screen. Kira paced. They're trying to drown truth in noise. Then we turn the noise into evidence, Amara said. Compile every smear, every threat. Document everything. We'll show the world what retaliation looks like. Later that week, Evelyn called again. They're negotiating behind closed doors. Meridian's investors are panicking. They'll try to offer settlement. Amara's reply was immediate. Refuse it, even if it's millions? Yes, why? Because money cleans conscience for those who can afford it. I'm not selling them absolution. That weekend, her building's power briefly cut out. Security cameras went dark for 20 minutes. When the lights returned, a single word had been spray-painted on her car in red. Enough. Police came, took photos, filled out forms, but their detachment was chilling. We can't confirm it's connected to the case, the officer said. Amara stared at the word again. The red still wet. You just confirmed it by refusing to name it. Inside her apartment later, she found herself trembling for the first time in weeks. Not from fear, from the unbearable exhaustion of always having to be composed. Her mother called. Baby, maybe you've done enough. Maybe you've proved your point. Amara's voice cracked. And what point would that be, Mom? That I can be humiliated, fight back, and still be told to stop when it makes them uncomfortable? A long silence on the line. Then her mother whispered, I just don't want to lose you to this. Amara closed her eyes. They already took enough from us. I'm not surrendering the rest. The next morning, her inbox pinged again. Another encrypted message from Darren, final batch. This one's explosive. Board correspondence between Meridian and city officials. They pulled strings to bury prior discrimination cases. Amara felt the room tilt slightly. This was no longer corporate misconduct. It was collusion. Kira looked at the files and whispered, this could take down half their board. Amara exhaled. Then we do it cleanly. Evidence first. No theatrics. That evening, she appeared live on a global broadcast. No filters, no legal disclaimers. Just Amara Blake speaking plainly. They told me professionalism means silence. That courage is compliance. That success is assimilation. But professionalism without equality is obedience, not respect. She looked straight into the camera. You can't ask me to smile through erasure. For a long moment, there was only her breathing. Then she ended with, every document you've seen is real. Every apology they've rehearsed is theater. The real scandal isn't what happened to me. It's how often it happens to people with no camera, no followers, no voice. This time they chose the wrong woman to underestimate. By midnight, the city was burning with discourse. Meridian's stock plummeted. The mayor announced an inquiry into corporate influence and discrimination cover-ups. Amara watched it unfold from her balcony. Distant sirens, the electric hum of awakening. Kira joined her. You realize what you've done, right? Amara's eyes stayed fixed on the skyline. No, what we've done is peel the mask off a system that thought it was untouchable. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. This isn't over. Amara stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, exactly. She set the phone down, turned toward the city lights. and for the first time, she smiled. Not in triumph, in defiance, because retaliation meant she had been heard, and being heard was the first crack in their fortress. The following week blurred into a strange kind of storm, loud, relentless, and isolating. Every network dissected Amara's broadcast. Some called it historic. Others labeled it reckless activism. But the volume of the conversation drowned nuance. She had become an archetype, no longer a person but a symbol for other people's arguments. Symbols don't sleep. Her office became a bunker. Reporters camped outside. Security doubled. Employees whispered when she passed, not out of disrespect but out of fear. Association had become risk. Kira tried to lighten the mood. You've officially replaced scandal with movement. Amara looked up from the stack of documents. Movements have casualties. Not this time. There's always casualties, Amara said quietly. Truth requires sacrifice. I just hope I can afford the price. That afternoon, Evelyn called. We received official notice. Meridian filed a defamation suit. It's performative, meant to exhaust you. Amara pinched the bridge of her nose. Let them file. Every line they write becomes another record of denial. Evelyn hesitated. You're becoming the story now, not the injustice. That's their tactic. Make it about my personality instead of their system. I won't play along. Later, Darren entered her office unannounced. He looked pale. They're going after your investors now. Quiet pressure, private warnings. Some are already withdrawing. Amara folded her hands. Expected. You'll lose millions. Better that than my credibility. Amara, you can't run a company on principle alone. She looked him dead in the eye. Then I'll build a new kind of company, he sighed. You sound like someone preparing for exile. She gave a faint, bitter smile. Exile builds profits. Night fell early that day, the city sinking into a wash of rain. Amara sat alone in her glass-walled office, the sound of thunder echoing like a verdict. Her phone rang again, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then a male voice. Ms. Blake, this is Detective Linton. We received a report you might be in danger. An anonymous tip mentioned threats escalating. Anonymous from where? Digital trail's been scrubbed, but the message said, they won't let her speak again. The line crackled. Then cut. Amara stared at the reflection in the glass. Her own face doubled against the storm. She whispered, they're running out of lies. So now they turn to fear. The next morning, the office was vandalized. Graffiti sprayed on the glass entrance. Go back to where you belong. The phrase sliced deeper than red paint could. Kira stood frozen, jaw tight. Do we call the police? We document it first, Amara said, pulling out her phone. Documentation is armor. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did. Hours later, during a live interview on Global View, the anchor turned cold. Ms. Blake, some argue your exposure campaign has unfairly damaged an entire corporation and its workers. Do you feel responsible for the fallout? Amara's expression barely shifted. I feel responsible for telling the truth. But couldn't this have been handled privately? Privacy protects the powerful. Silence protects the system. The anchor smiled tightly. You've become quite the polarizing figure. I'm not polarizing, Amara said. I'm visible. And visibility always looks like disruption when you're used to invisibility. The clip went viral within minutes. By evening, a news story broke. An anonymous insider claiming Amara had faked parts of the leaked documents. Kira burst into her office, screen in hand. They're calling it Blakegate. Hashtags already trending. Amara took the tablet, read the post once, and said, Good. Let them dig. They'll find more truth than they expected. But what if they fabricate evidence? They already have. That's the pattern. When cornered, the system doesn't apologize. It mutates. The next day, she woke to a knock at her door. It was Darren. Rain-soaked, eyes hollow. They've suspended me, he said, for breach of confidentiality. I'm sorry, he shook his head. Don't be. I sent the last file. The one that proves city officials coordinated with Meridian to suppress complaints. Amara's chest tightened. That's the one that ends it. No, he said softly. That's the one that exposes everyone, including people you still have to work with. Then it ends everything. He stepped closer. Are you sure you're ready for that? Amara looked past him toward the skyline. I've been ready since the night they refused me at the door. When the final leak hit, the internet fractured. Emails confirmed years of quiet settlements. Internal policies marked "Do Not Disclose," and communications with city officials advising, avoid public acknowledgement of racial claims to maintain tourism confidence. It was no longer just a scandal. It was a structural revelation. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. Executives resigned for personal reasons. Meridian's 80th stock crashed to historic lows. And Amara Blake, the woman once humiliated at a velvet rope, and was now the name every network couldn't stop saying. But victory tasted hollow. She sat in her office long after the others left, the glow of city lights flickering through the glass. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through comments. Praise, vitriol, admiration, hate, all blending into noise. Kira entered quietly. You did it. Amara didn't look up. Did I? You burned their facade to the ground. And what's left for me in the ashes? Kira hesitated. Maybe peace. Amara shook her head. Peace doesn't grow in ruins. Later that night, she walked out into the rain. No umbrella, no entourage. The street smelled of ozone and asphalt. Every window reflected fragments of her face. In a small cafe window, she saw the headline looping on TV. Blake versus Meridian, court hearing confirmed. The world would now decide if truth was defamation. She whispered, almost to herself. They've built a courtroom to contain a mirror. Her phone buzzed once more. A message from her mother. You don't have to win, baby. You just have to finish it. Amara stood in the rain, reading it again and again, until the letters blurred. Finish it. Back at her apartment, she removed her soaked coat and stared at her reflection, not as the black CEO headlines had made her, not as the symbol others needed, but as a woman standing alone against an empire of civility. The mirror fogged as her breath quickened. Tears rose unbidden, anger, grief, exhaustion collapsing into something beyond language. She pressed a hand to the glass and whispered, let them see this part too. The breaking point wasn't fury. It was the quiet realization that change costs more than injustice ever admits. But she wasn't breaking down. She was breaking open. The courthouse smelled of polish and paper, the scent of order pretending to be justice. Outside, the plaza overflowed with cameras, protesters, and barricades. One side held signs reading "Justice for Amara." The other, "Stop corporate witch hunts." Amara stepped from the black sedan in silence. The noise hit her like weather, chants, shouts, flashes. Kira walked beside her carrying a folder. Evelyn trailed close behind, whispering strategy. Remember, Evelyn murmured, they'll try to provoke emotion. Don't give them reaction, give them record. Amara's eyes didn't leave the courthouse doors. They mistook composure for permission once. Not today. Inside, the courtroom was sterile. High ceilings, pale walls, everything designed to neutralize passion. The judge presided like a monument, impassive and immovable. Across the aisle, Meridian's attorneys sat in precise formation. Among them, Amara saw him, Richard Talbot, the hotel manager from that night. Clean suit, nervous jaw. The same man who had said, "You don't look like you belong here." Now he avoided her eyes. The irony landed quietly but heavy. The man who once guarded a door now sat defending an empire's rot. Evelyn began. Your Honor, this is not merely about defamation or corporate reputation. This is about the right to speak truth without institutional retaliation. Ms. Blake exercised that right. The defendants responded with coordinated suppression. Meridian's lead counsel rose smoothly. Your Honor, the plaintiff has willfully disseminated confidential documents, defamed our clients, and damaged livelihoods. This case isn't about truth. It's about reckless ambition. Amara sat still, jaw tight. Reckless ambition, she repeated under her breath. That's what they call self-respect when it's inconvenient. The first witness, a former Meridian employee. Nervous, trembling, clutching her statement like a life raft. They told us not to log bias complaints, she said. Said it was better for company optics. I signed NDAs I didn't understand. Who told you that? Evelyn asked. My supervisor. Said corporate doesn't want noise. And what kind of noise? The witness hesitated. Complaints from people who looked like me. Gasps rippled. The judge banged the gavel for silence. Amara didn't move. Only her fingers twitched once on the table. Midday break. Amara walked the courthouse hallway, reporters swarming. One shouted, "Do you feel vindicated?" She stopped just long enough to say, "Justice isn't a feeling. It's a system that either works or fails." Afternoon, the defense called Talbot. He walked stiffly to the stand, eyes fixed ahead. "Mr. Talbot," the defense attorney began, "on the night in question, did you knowingly refuse Ms. Blake entry because of her race?" "No," he said. "I was following protocol." Evelyn stood. "Protocol?" "Yes, the guest list, which you checked only after she questioned your judgment. Is that correct?" He shifted. "It was a misunderstanding. Yet you called security. And when they arrived, did you say, 'She doesn't belong here'?" Talbot froze. "I don't recall." Evelyn stepped closer. Would it help to hear the footage? Silence. The courtroom monitors lit up. The grainy video played, his voice unmistakable. Crisp even through noise. "She doesn't look like she belongs here." The sound hit like a bullet. When the clip ended, Talbot's hands shook on the stand. Evelyn's voice was measured. "Is that your voice, Mr. Talbot?" He swallowed. "Yes." No further questions. The judge adjourned early. The courtroom emptied slowly, murmurs trailing like smoke. Kira exhaled as they stepped outside. "That video, it's the nail in their coffin." Amara shook her head. "No, the nail isn't truth. It's how long they pretended it didn't exist." The next day, Meridian's CEO took the stand, polished, scripted, radiating confidence. "Our company does not tolerate discrimination. These isolated incidents do not represent our values." Evelyn approached, tone surgical. "Is that why your internal emails labeled bias complaints as noise? Why your training reports were suppressed to avoid reputational risk?" The CEO faltered. "Those were misinterpretations." "Then why did you approve settlements that required silence clauses?" "I can't recall." Evelyn smiled faintly. Convenient amnesia. "That's a corporate epidemic." The judge didn't intervene. For the first time, Amara felt the balance shift, not triumph, but gravity. During recess, Darren appeared quietly at the back of the room. He caught Amara's eye. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Then he mouthed, "Almost over." She nodded once, acknowledging the cost written all over his face. He'd lost his career for this. In his eyes, she saw exhaustion and freedom. Final arguments began at dusk. Evelyn's voice filled the chamber. "They say Ms. Blake ruined reputations. But a reputation built on suppression is already ruined. They say she cost them millions. But what's the price of silence multiplied over decades? This is not an attack on a company, it's a defense of accountability." Then she turned to the jury. "The truth is not defamation. It's disclosure." The defense's rebuttal was brief, cold precision. This case was never about race. It's about procedure, privacy, and the reckless destruction of an institution's integrity. But even their tone carried defeat. As court adjourned for deliberation, Amara walked alone down the marble steps. Cameras flashed. She didn't look up. The air was heavy with waiting. Kira approached. "Whatever happens, they can't erase what's already exposed." Amara nodded slowly. "No, but they'll try to rewrite it in smaller font." Hours passed. Night fell. Then, a message buzzed on Evelyn's phone. "Verdict ready." They returned to the courtroom. The jury foreman stood, paper trembling slightly. "In the matter of Meridian Hotels versus Amara Blake, we find in favor of the defendant." Noise erupted. Gasps, sobs, flashes, applause. Evelyn smiled for the first time in months. "You won, Amara," but Amara didn't stand. Didn't cheer. She just exhaled. A slow, almost imperceptible release. "This wasn't a win," she said softly. "It was a diagnosis." Outside, floodlights bathed the courthouse in artificial daylight. Reporters shouted her name. Protesters chanted. She stepped up to the microphones. "I didn't fight to win," she said, voice clear and even. "I fought to expose the cost of silence. And I want you to remember something. I didn't bring the storm. I revealed it." Then she turned, walked past the cameras, and disappeared into the dark. Later, alone in her car, she finally allowed herself to tremble. The city blurred beyond the windshield. Justice had come, but justice never erased the scars. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her mother. You did more than finish it. You changed the conversation. Amara stared out at the skyline, bruised by cloudlight, alive with noise, and whispered, "Then let the conversation never end." In the distance, the courthouse clock struck midnight. Not closure, continuance. Silence lingered long after the verdict. Not the clean silence of peace, but the kind that settles after collapse. The sound of a system realizing it has been seen. Amara didn't attend the press dinner, didn't grant interviews, didn't accept awards. She went home. For the first time in months, there were no statements to craft, no evidence to prepare, no strategy to anticipate. Just the hum of her refrigerator, the uneven rhythm of her heartbeat, the quiet ache of survival. She poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. The city outside pulsed with noise, distant sirens, fragments of celebration. But inside, everything stood still. Evelyn had called earlier. "They'll appeal," she said flatly. "I know. They'll also restructure, fire a few people, hire new faces. They'll call it reform." Amara had paused, then replied, "They'll repaint the walls and call it revolution." Now, the words echoed. She didn't regret saying them. She regretted how true they were. 2 days later, headlines spun narratives. Whistleblower wins landmark case, corporate giant faces reckoning the woman who spoke truth to power. None of them mentioned the insomnia, the lost friends, the months of threats and isolation. None mentioned how victory felt less like triumph and more like a bruise that stopped bleeding. Kira texted, "They're turning you into a symbol." "Be careful," Amara replied, "symbols don't bleed." "I still do." At the office of her nonprofit, one that barely survived the legal war, Amara faced a wall of unopened mail. Letters from strangers, some grateful, some venomous. One envelope contained only 3 words handwritten in steady ink. "You made them flinch." She stared at the sentence for a long time. It wasn't admiration. It was observation. And it was enough. A week passed. Meridian stocks fell. Sponsors withdrew. Statements flooded the media. All polished apologies, all void of ownership. The CEO resigned to prioritize family. Talbot disappeared from the press circuit. The PR team issued a statement about moving forward. Amara watched it all with clinical detachment. The machine was wounded, not dismantled. Still, the wound mattered. She met Darren at a quiet cafe, both of them disguised under hats and exhaustion. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't think that word applies anymore," she said. He nodded. "I read the verdict transcript. You held the line." "I didn't hold it," she said. "I just refused to move." He smiled faintly. "That's holding it." They sat in silence. Between them, unspoken truth. Both had paid in currency no one would refund. When they parted, he said, "You know this isn't the end." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm still here." That night, Amara visited her mother's apartment. Her mother opened the door, eyes tired but bright. "You should have called first." "If I did, I might have changed my mind." They ate in silence, and lentil stew, bread, the same meal she'd grown up with. Halfway through, her mother said, "When you were little, you once told your teacher that fairness wasn't the same as justice." Amara looked up. "And what did she say?" "She said, 'Then you'll have a hard life.'" Amara smiled thinly. She was right. Her mother reached across the table, touched her hand, but a necessary one. Days turned into weeks. Amara began receiving invitations, panels, interviews, brand collaborations cloaked in empowerment rhetoric. She deleted most without reading. When one network offered her a 6-figure deal for an exclusive documentary, she wrote back, "I didn't fight to be repackaged. I fought to be heard." She refused to be commodified by the same machine she had exposed. One afternoon, she found herself standing in front of Meridian's flagship hotel. It was open again, repainted, rebranded, smiling staff at the entrance. The same doors she had once been barred from now slid open automatically. She didn't go in. She just stood there, watching. A new manager greeted guests with performative warmth. A PR photographer snapped pictures of diversity initiatives. Amara whispered, "They built a mirror where the door used to be." Then she turned and walked away. A letter arrived the next week. Official seal. From Office of the Civil Rights Commission. Subject: Independent review of corporate discrimination procedures initiated, case reference, Blake vs. Meridian. She read it twice. The world doesn't shift fast, but sometimes it tilts a few degrees. Enough to unbalance the old lies. Months later, she spoke quietly at a community forum. No cameras, no reporters. Just people trying to understand how to fight without losing themselves. Someone asked how she kept going. "I didn't," she said. "I stopped, fell apart, then kept moving anyway." The system counts on fatigue. Don't give it that, no applause. Just stillness, and the kind that means people heard her, not just listened. Afterward, Kira walked her to the car. "You're not the same person who started this." Amara glanced at her reflection in the window. "No, I'm the person who survived her." The appeal came months later. Meridian filed it quietly, betting fatigue would dull public outrage. But this time the headlines turned against them. The tide had shifted, not because people changed, but because they'd been forced to look. Amara didn't attend the second hearing. Evelyn handled it. The appeal was denied. When the notice arrived, Amara didn't smile. She folded it, placed it in a drawer, and moved on. A year later, her book came out. Not a memoir, a document. Cold, precise, unflinching. No embellishment, no pity. Just data and consequence. The title, The System of Silence. Critics called it too restrained. Readers called it necessary. One night, walking home, she passed a mural. Her face painted in color. Below it, the words, "She didn't belong," and that's why she changed it. For the first time, she didn't feel anger at the phrase. She felt distance, and the kind that means a chapter has truly ended. She stood there for a while, then whispered to the air, "Erase me if you must, but keep the truth." In her apartment, she opened the window. The city murmured below, alive, flawed, relentless. Amara sat down, wrote a single line on a blank page. The point was never to win. The point was to make sure losing meant exposure. She closed the notebook. Morning light broke. The world had not changed. But it had been documented. That was enough.